Captain Marikow sat in the command chair of the Astra's Grace, her gaze locked on the holomap screen as the rescue vessel drifted at the edge of Ember Nebula. The ship's slender hull hummed with latent power, but its crew was tense whispers of danger clung to every corridor like static. They'd come to answer a simple distress call from Cydonia X, a fringe mining world rumored to be teetering on collapse. The beacon's message had been stark. Cydonia X, we need help. We're being hunted. Distance to target, 2.6 million kilometers in closing, reported Ensign Lyra Kim at the nav station. The amber nebular gas glowed behind her viewports, casting the bridge in an ominous light. Lyra's fingers danced across her console, plotting the final descent into the planet's gravity well. Mara nodded. Bring us to sublight, she ordered, and warned the miners were on approach. A soft chime rang, and the bridge paused as a secondary message scrolled into view. Geoscan of Cydonia X's surface. The planet was scarred by cratered mining zones, acid storm clouds roiling in the lower atmosphere. Hotspots of raw energy flickered around the equatorial belts, each one more feral than the last. Lieutenant Eric Shen, head of security, frowned. These energy readings, they're not volcanic. There's no tectonic activity here. Chief Engineer Jin Ramirez leaned over his shoulder. Looks like directed emissions. Someone's building power hubs down there. Possibly weaponized. Mara's chest tightened. The distress beacon's panic-stricken tones suddenly made sense. Whatever it is, someone's in trouble. Shields up to 50% as we enter the atmosphere, Jin. I want thrusters on standby for immediate maneuvering. Aye, Captain. Jin's voice was calm, but his eyes betrayed the unease crawling through him. As the Astra's Grace plunged into thicker atmosphere, gravity wells tugged at the vessel. The interior lights flickered under the strain. Mara watched the external monitors. Gleaming towers of machinery, half swallowed by dust storms, dotted the planet's surface. Here and there, tiny specks of movement. The miners' vehicles, their headlights like fireflies lost in a crimson fog. Approach vector established, Lyra said. I can bring us within shuttle range of the colony's central platform. Do it, Mara replied, rising from her chair. I'll assemble the landing team. Not long after, 3 armed shuttles launched from Astra's Grace, skimming through roiling clouds toward the colony's main docking bay. Mara and Shen led the primary team. Jin provided technical backup. Geologist Marnie Cole carried environmental sensors, and Sergeant Lila Orton was on overwatch, pulse rifle at the ready. The shuttle's landing ramp clanged open onto battered metal catwalks. A thick haze of red dust clung to the air. Dim emergency lights flickered along the corridors, and a distant hum of machinery was punctuated by muffled explosions. Status? Mara whispered into her com. Miners reporting galvanic discharges in Sector C, Jin replied, voice crackling. Some sort of energy beam burning through their defenses. They crept forward. At the corridor junction, a battered console blared a holographic alert. Security breach. Evacuate now. Sparks showered the walkway as cables writhed like exposed veins. Marnie tapped her scanner, brow furrowed. Radiation levels spiking. It's not natural uranium decay, something more exotic. Before Mara could respond, the wall opposite them shattered inward. A shimmering beam of violet light erupted, vaporizing the corridor floor and sending them sprawling. Lila Dove, dragging Mara behind a twisted support strut. Mara's heart thundered. She peered through a gap in the debris. A tall, armored figure strode forward, its silhouette jagged like broken glass, weapons mounted on its shoulders. The beam cannon pulsed in its grip, charging for another shot. Deravinian, Shen muttered, voice tight. That's one of their advanced scouts. Mara's pulse quickened. Historical files described the Deravinians as consummate killers organized under a rigid honor code, but utterly merciless. Their homeworld, Deravin Prime, was a furnace of volcanic vents and acidic skies. Any who survived there, the record said, were tempered into living weapons. "Contact Astra's Grace," Mara hissed into her com. "We have hostiles. Request immediate weapon support." Static answered. The fleet above had already begun its assault on the orbiting rescue ship. Mara watched the feed from there. Orbiting guns, sapphire blue lances sliced through the nebula, but each salvo bounced harmlessly off a colossal black dreadnought's shields. "They're baiting us," Jin growled. "They want to draw us in close." Mara swallowed. They had minutes, maybe seconds. "All right, Shen, fall back to the shuttle bay. Priority Alpha, evacuate any survivors. We'll cover the rear." Shen nodded, signaling the others. But as they retreated, the scout fired again. The pulse tore through a support beam, sending debris raining down. Marnie screamed as the rubble cut into her leg. "Move!" Lila shouted, dragging Marnie too. Safety. Mara knelt beside her, ripping off a piece of her own uniform to bind the wound. "Can you walk?" Marnie gritted her teeth. "With difficulty, then limp," Mara ordered. "We're almost to the lifts." Behind them, the scout strode. Forward, energy cannon at the ready. Mara rose, sweeping her rifle in a wide arc. She fired a suppressive burst at the armor plating, glancing sparks, but no penetration. "Jin," she called. "Any ideas?" Overcome's Jin's voice was urgent. "Captain, if you can get close enough, I can send an electromagnetic pulse through the colony's power grid. It might knock their suits offline." Mara glanced at the scout, then back at Marnie's bleeding leg. No time to hesitate. "Cover me," she told Shen and Lila. "I'll run for the grid node." With a nod, Shen and Lila opened fire. Mara sprinted across the corridor, diving into a maintenance hatch that led toward the auxiliary power station. Behind her, the scout charged, beam cannon flaring. Inside the hatch, fluorescent lights sputtered. She crawled through elbow-deep wiring, the coating crackling with static. At last, she popped out into a circular chamber dominated by a humming reactor core. The control console flickered with live energy readings surging, unstable. "Here goes," she whispered. Fingers flying over the interface, she initiated the EMP sequence. The console beeped in acknowledgement. All she needed was a final override. Suddenly, the door behind her shuddered. The scout's armored fist cracked the metal. Mara dove for the panel, overriding safety logs. Come on. Lights dimmed, then plunged to red. A high-pitched whine filled the air. The reactor coughed, then discharged in a brilliant flash. The power grid flickered, and a deep pulse rolled through the station. Outside, the scout's helmet light sputtered, and then went dark. Its beam cannon collapsed as servos seized. A distant roar echoed through the corridors as multiple Deravinian units went offline. Mara exhaled. She'd done it. But the victory was fleeting. A thunderous boom rattled the station as the Astra's Grace unleashed its final weapon from orbit, a singularity torpedo. The shockwave rippled down to the surface, ripping through hull plating, and the entire colony shook as if racked by an earthquake. Mara stumbled, gripping the console. A voice crackled in her ear. "Captain, we need to evac now." It was Shen. She leapt to her feet, racing back through the hatch with the station's lights flickering around her. Outside, corridors buckled under strain. Panels ripped free, depositing them in a haze of sparks. Marnie and Lila were already at the lift, bloodied but alive. Mara tackled the hatch door as the station's gravity fluctuation yanked at her limbs. With a final heave, she shattered through, and they tumbled into the lift compartment. Shen slammed the controls. The doors sealed as the station's core groaned in its death throes. Alarms blared. Light panels exploded overhead. Then the lift dropped through levels, through dust-choked halls, until they burst out into the crimson storm. The shuttle bay lights flickered on. Their ride was still bare, engines spitting plasma. Lila hauled Marnie aboard, Shen and Mara following. The ramp closed, and the shuttle surged upward just as the station behind them shattered in a pulse of resonant energy, sending debris and flame skyward. Through the viewport, Mara watched the wreckage fall back into the red haze. The distress beacon on Astra's Grace blinked with frantic urgency. Another call for help, but this time from her own ship, fighting for its life against the death fleet overhead. Mara swallowed hard, heart pounding. "Strap in," she said, voice low. This rescue just became a war, and we're the only line between Cydonia X and total annihilation. The shuttle's engines roared as it pierced through Cydonia IX's crimson haze. Inside, the team braced against violent turbulence. Captain Marakow's knuckles whitened on the bulkhead. Beside her, Lieutenant Eric Shen checked the status. Display: shields holding at 30%. Main thrusters barely responsive under orbital fire. "Touchdown in 30 seconds, reported pilot Reva Tran, voice steady despite the shaking cabin. Through the viewport, the shattered remains of the Mayan colony sprawled below crumpled towers, smoldering wreckage, and the telltale glow of Daravinian dropships descending like deathly moths. "Get your gear ready," Mara ordered. "Our people are down there." Shen and Sergeant Lila Orton exchanged a look. Both carried the burden of what they'd seen. Miners cut down in the corridors, Jin's frantic plea for evacuation, then the single devastating singularity strike from Astra's Grace. They'd driven the death fleet off, but at what cost? The shuttle's ramp slammed open onto blasted concrete. Acid rain hissed on contact with the hull, sending up steam. The wind carried metallic taste and the low hum of alien engines. Mara inhaled the acrid air, steeling herself. "Form up," she barked. "We move fast." They swept across the debris field. Shen covered the rear. Lila scanned the skies with a handheld railgun. Geologist Marnie Cole limped beside them, her bandaged legs soaked through, but her eyes bright with determination. Behind them, two surviving. Miners, an older couple named Tor and May, clutched each other, faces drawn with fear. Up ahead loomed the main dropship, its hull jet black and serrated like a monstrous insect's carapace. A single ramp extended, disgorging armored Daravinian warriors in pairs. Their energy carbines glowed with violet charge. A thunderous voice boomed from the ship's calm, unintelligible, but unmistakably a declaration of conquest. "Ambush," Shen hissed, diving behind a broken support beam. Plasma bolts sizzled into the concrete, carving molten craters in his feet. Mara kicked out a trailing cable, tripping one warrior as it charged. He crashed against the hull, momentarily stunned. She lashed out with her combat blade, slicing through his reinforced carapace. The creature fell with a clatter of steel onto stone. "Fall back to that ridge," she yelled, pointing toward a low cliff that offered cover and a vantage point. They sprinted, dragging Tor and May along. Behind them, more Daravinians advanced in tight phalanx. Lila covered their retreat, firing in short bursts that sent sparks dancing off alien armor. As they lunged over the ridge, Marnie cried out. "Look! Below, a trembling crater gaped, a remnant of the Singularity strike. At its center, a faint blue glow pulsed. The miners' energy collectors lay twisted in the rime of exotic frost. Could that be? Marnie whispered. "Some kind of power source," Mara said, eyes narrowing. "If we can trigger it again, this time as a lure, we might buy the others enough time to escape." Shen frowned. "We'd have to get inside the crater and set the charges manually. And we're in the open, Mara replied. But it's our best shot. She turned to the Myers. Can you two walk? Tor nodded, shaking. We'll try. Mara met Lila's eyes. Cover us. Then to Shen. Lead Tor and May. I'll plant the charge. Shen ushered the couple down the slope as Lila provided suppressive fire. Mara grabbed a Demeter charge from her pack and anti-shield explosive and sprinted toward the crater's edge. Plasma bolts scorched the air around her. She edged onto the frozen rim, the ground groaning under stress. Below, the reactors. Glow flickered alive, unstable, waiting. Mara jammed the charge into a fissure, her heart pounding as she set the timer. A final bolt tore past, gouging the frost beside her. She dove for cover as the scream of Lila's railgun echoed. The timer ticked down. 3, 2, 1. A searing flash erupted. A shockwave rolled outward, ripping through Daravinian. Lines, armor plates buckled. Energy shields collapsed in a shower of sparks. Warriors tumbled as unconscious electromagnetic whips rattled their servos. Mara crawled to the crater's edge. Beneath the violet haze, the deathly silence of disabled. Alien war machines lay in her path. Tor and May scrambled to her, dazed but alive. Move, Shen's voice called. Extraction point 5 clicks north. They staggered to their feet, running through a gauntlet of smoking wreckage. The thunder of distant engines warned of another dropship descending, but the crater blast had delayed it just enough. A flare lanced across the sky. Riva's shuttle swooped low, landing with a skid. Mara and Shen helped the miners aboard. Lila clambered in last, weapon ready. The ramp sealed, and the engines spiraled them upward. Through the viewport, they watched as the Daravinian dropship finally landed, but only to find the crater empty, its power grid destroyed. Back on Astra's Grace, the survivors were ushered into the medical bay. Mara stood in the corridor, the weight of command heavy on her shoulders. Around her, the crew tended to burns, shrapnel wounds, and shell shock. The amber glow of the nebula seeped through the portholes, staining the hall in warm relief. Shen approached, blood still drying at his hairline. We did it, he said, quietly. Mara's gaze drifted to the viewport, where the planet's red storms churned beneath the retreating fleet. For now, she replied. We've bought them time, but the Daravinians will regroup. And next time, they won't be so easily fooled. Lila joined them, slinging her railgun onto her back. Then we'll be ready. Mara squared her shoulders. We will. Because here's the lesson, Eric. They asked us for help. And we delivered more than they ever imagined. But the real test is, can we do it again? Shen exchanged a determined look with Lila. Tor and May emerged from the medbay, hands clasped in gratitude. Mara smiled, weary but resolute. Set course. For the next outpost, she ordered, and stand by for warp. We've got a Deathworld on our heels, and they're coming back.